Dear President of New Direction, Thomas Poreva, distinguished members of various parliaments, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Witold and Robert, thank you for the organization, but also thank you for inviting me and for this great initiative that we finally bring together not only the libertarian, pro-market and conservative side in one room and in one table. And there is a story that I will tell you a little bit later when it all started, at least here in Europe, because we were all traveling to the US to see what has happened there, or what was happening there, but we could not do it. So this will come back. I will discuss 5 points, and as I know, as always, we are short on time because with people who believe in freedom, in individual freedom, everybody tends to not stick to time, come in late, and all those things. So I will be very short and try to discuss the things that are important right now. So the need to bring all sides of conservative liberal families together, focus on the general message, does not matter if you're a Christian Democrat or a libertarian or a neocon or a national conservative. We are all the same ideology. We all believe in our European Judeo-Christian values that has already been mentioned by the president of New Direction. So in the last couple of years, we've seen, if we look at history, and we've seen the challenges that we have met, in the last couple of years, the far-right populism has gained supporters all across the globe, propagating their skepticism towards free markets and their support for protectionist policies. Nevertheless, the far-right isn't the only political movement, kind of these positions. It's the so-called liberal left that has also gained popularity in our Western world. And Yaron Brook, who you will hear later today and tomorrow, has just given a talk in Vienna which we called the problems, or the problems on the left and on the right. And we have to be reasonable. I mean, we are the center. We believe in reason. And this is the message that we should bring across, not the other thing. So funnily enough, both groups on the far right and on the far left use the tools of globalization to grow their international networks. Personalities like Jeremy Corbyn, AOC, or Bernie Sanders enjoy an almost superstar status, and not only in their home countries, unfortunately. So furthermore, with both groups having gained a vast number of supporters and media attention, politicians and bureaucrats have also increased their power over society. The pandemic actually has shown the power that politicians can have over the individual. And this is cronyism. Put it as it is cronyism. And the consequences, not of COVID, but of the lockdown crisis, are immeasurable. I mean, as a central banker, I see what is happening there, and that the issue of monetary policy and fiscal policy is not separated and independent anymore is one of the largest and biggest challenges that we face every day. And as an academic, and I hope you all share this, the academics in this room, we have to guard this and be very careful and explain why monetary policy must be independent from fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is politicians' actions. Monetary policy is the central bank's action, but it's different. So keep that in mind. So nonetheless, the growing popularity of politicians, bureaucrats, and big government advocates are the enemies of our freedom and the liberties that we have, that have become so dear to us. And those of our friends who have seen the fall of the Berlin Wall more than 30 years ago know exactly what we talk about. Freedom only becomes dear to us when we understand that we are losing it. But then it's too late. We have to look at it and we have to fight before we start losing those individual and entrepreneurial freedoms. So meanwhile, there is no voice that depends on the fundamental principles of liberty in the West. And the principles are private property, the protection of private property. And we have seen several parties across Europe who really want to grab those values, the private property, things that we have so hard worked for to gain. And of course, free enterprise. Individualism. We must stress that individualism is important to us, not only because Hayek mentioned that and said the individual thinks and acts. It's not society per se, it's the individual who knows best what is good for him. And of course, the principles of limited government. Free markets, the rule of law above all. And there have been situations in Europe, in the European Union, where we simply have forgotten about the principles of the rule of law. And I mean, since this center, New Direction, has been founded by Lady Thatcher, she was one of the advocates of the rule of law. And she has been predicting in various speeches, not only in the Bruce speech, what will happen in Europe. And unfortunately, I really have to say as a European, unfortunately, she was right when she predicted that maybe Britain will leave the European Union because of various things. So we have to keep that in mind. Another thought that is probably good for us now these days, Hayek saw it differently because he thought that we should, that the elites should defend and influence. But we now have the good opportunity of social media, not only that, it can be used in a positive way, but of information from bottom up and not top down. So we can use both sides. And this will definitely help us to keep up the democracy and an organic communication system. So if we want to defend the principles that made up the Western world as great as it is or was today, and especially Europe, it is important to bring together those like-minded, liberty-loving individuals to work together and to face the obstacles. And in every individual decides for himself and for his own future. And I, as an Austrian economist, I believe in the division of labor. And trust me, with all the faces I see here in this room, there are groups that are experts on taxes. There are groups that are experts on social security. There are groups that are experts on global issues with regards to climate or defense. And we should just let those groups do what they can do best, and then unite and cooperate and coordinate. So allow us not to reinvent the wheel in each and every country and each and every situation. Divide labor. I think this is what we can learn and what we have learned from the Austrian school. So believe in that. And yes, of course, libertarian, Christian Democrats, neocons and co might have different views on a range of issues. Nevertheless, our vision for the future is based on the same principles. Personal and individual responsibility, people who voluntarily act together and through now and through time, and freedom with the opportunity to choose what is good for them. And of course, I'm a strong believer in competition. In my classes at university, I ask my students, do you think competition is good? And then, you know, eventually you hear the answer, well, maybe it's soccer, maybe car racing, maybe with some other sports. But then, oh no, competition, it's not good. It's ugly, it's negative. Come on, where are we? Competition helps, is a spontaneous process. And with that, we can advance ourselves. And we should keep that in mind. And as Hayek himself acknowledged, our institutions of liberty are not the result of a constructive rationalist, top-down decisions, but the result of many generations interacting and working together. It's the result of tradition. And so even more hardcore libertarians would agree that our Western society, which is based on those traditions, are the result of our institutions of liberty through a process of trial and error. It's this spontaneous order that makes a market, that makes us as a society work together. The spontaneity and the failures that we have seen and out of which we learn. So from the Catholic School of Salamanca through Lord Acton, I will touch it in a minute because I want to look at the spontaneous order first and at the challenges that we have seen especially, and you as MEPs know of those in Brussels, but our American friends who are here with us to help us create a better understanding are important, that we should look also at what Schumpeter has taught us. Creative destruction in a positive way, that we do not have to be afraid of those challenges that we see in Europe and that we as Europeans, or some of the Europeans at least, think that these paradigm shifts are very negative for Europe. If we believe in markets and if we believe in innovation, neither climate change and ecological challenges are an issue, because we will solve them with new technologies. Digital connectivity is an issue at the European Parliament, at the Commission, at the central bank, everywhere. It is not a problem. We will also solve it. The pressure against our democracy and against our values has already been mentioned, but what we really have to look into is the disinformation and the so-called fake news. This is something where we have to stand up united against that. And of course, the geopolitical transfers and the demographic instability and fragility that we see. So those 4 points are things that we as neocons, libertarians, as pro-market people need to stand up and fight and see the positive, the opportunities. I believe in opportunities and the outcomes of that. So from the Catholic School of Salamanca through Lord Acton, the Austrian school, over Reagan and Thatcher, the principles of a prosperous society are based on the same premises. Institutions play a key role as long as they stick to the rule of law. And of course, in the development of the society, and they can only evolve and improve if like-minded individuals like us are working together and are acting together. Western society and its Judeo-Christians, which values which have already been mentioned, have been shown to provide the best bedrock of the development of free societies. So without these institutions and Western values or morals, it wouldn't be possible to pursue a freer and world that is based on the principles that I have already mentioned. Individual freedom, responsibility, and competition. I think those are the cornerstones. And yes, we can disagree on the limits of government first, but first we need to reach the stage in which our institutions of liberty aren't in danger anymore. Until then, it is necessary to work together to protect the very fundamentals of the free world. So frequently we fight on smaller aspects of our ideology, but if we back up to see where the basis of our ideas lie, then we must acknowledge that neocons, libertarians, Christian Democrats and co come from the same direction, and they should stand together in the fight against the anti-liberal forces. And trust me, those guys are much better coordinated and are much better funded than all of us. So we really need to look into that. And let me close with a story that it's actually not the story, it's the truth. Back in 2000, the European center-right movement had to travel to the US to meet at Atlas and Heritage resource bank meetings. Just that we Europeans met there because there was no network, there was nothing. And it took us 2 years until we started the European Resource Bank in Europe. And finally now we have run it over 20 years now. Or it will be 20 years next year that we have run it. And it's grown and grown and grown. And out of that, many other movements have evolved. And I think this is the best opportunity to see how we can cooperate and how we can divide labor. And after all, thanks to Lady Thatcher, who has told us, never give up, always stand up and fight. And we share the same values and we believe in reason. And I think that is the most important thing, to be reasonable. It is the one thing that differentiates us from the rest of our political competitors. And with that, thank you very much. I wish the conference a great outcome, and I would love to see you all next year together with the European Resource Bank meeting, united to be a much bigger group and really show the muscles that we have, not only here, but also in the other way. Thank you.